Hey guys, Mr. Genie here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. If you end up enjoying this full video game review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, chill, and all that cool stuff for free. And chilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. So, as typical fashion, when it is conceivable, I usually break down these things between story and gameplay. Now, I had talked about this during the Let's Play, but I did play one of the previous Armored Core games before. I just didn't remember which numbered game it was. And from what I could recall from it is that the story wasn't that the main focus of the game. More so the gameplay was the vast number of, vast, like, where the, where the stuff went into in the making of this franchise. And I can say with certainty that Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, for me, definitely fits still under that category. While, yes, it does have a story, the story isn't particularly great. I mean, it's not terrible either, it's just serviceable, as we follow a mercenary here, the one you play as, always seeking that dollar, money, working for organizations and switching over when that dollar bill speaks to you. And that causes you to drift from team to team, but you still have a handler by the name of Walter, who is the one who is sort of your, I guess, sponsor in a way, I guess, or manager is a better word for it, rather, as he gives you mission after mission as you progress through said story. And as we progress through, and as you've made your way through various organizations, taken down their, their mechs and whatnot, eventually, the mechs themselves seem to, some of them anyway, seem to be more robust, much like this worm one that is so robust, in fact, that that everyone feels that they are forced to need to have a temporary truce in order for them to proceed to, once this is taken care of, fight for whatever they want to do with the coral, which is the main thing that, like, powers all of these mechs in this universe. It is also established lore that most of the pilots, if you can call them that, I guess, are more or less humanoid than may perhaps be given credence to, with augments and such. At least some of the dialogue seems to explain that some humanity was taken away, perhaps, most notably of the character you play, which is why you are a silent protagonist in this game. But somewhere along the way, you pick up a rogue signal, or unknown one, rather, known as Irie. Once she is established, she is a Rubiconian, a being of the coral, as it were, that speaks directly to you and to no one else. This acts as your sort of conscience slash, additional voice to give credence to any mission, the missions you go on. at certain points throughout the game, in its story, you will be given these choices. Now, when I first went through it, I didn't recognize little choice icons, which is why I was so frustrated, where I felt like, it wasn't crystal clear, because my eyeballs probably weren't catching on to what it was trying to, portray there. Nonetheless, these choices can lead you down to the 3 different endings of Fires of Rubicon. There are 3 story-based endings. One where you blow up the coral because it is too powerful. One where you sort of lend it back to the Rubiconians themselves, and I forget the third one, but it involves fighting Walter himself as a result of whatever gets him to be on your bad side. There are, I do appreciate when, even with a pretty base story, that the game still branches itself off and gives other opportunities, and let's be real here. Give more excuse to extend the gameplay, really. That's the real reason that's there in the way that it is. But, I digress. I never felt like any of the choices met the matching style of, say, Ghost of Tsushima. That choice in particular still really engages me when I first encountered it. I remember pausing, I remember thinking about it, I remember reflecting about West versus East, what it meant to be traditionalist versus the new era. There was so much in that choice that was so profound, and the fact that the game even allowed that level of choice is way more fascinating to me, whereas this seems, again, the way it's portrayed, that I wasn't really thinking as much as to, what the end result of the coral was. I guess the best result is the last one, the true ending, as it's called, literally. So I think that is a little bit of a cheat, but I guess simultaneously, simultaneously the true ending, I guess. Where you give the coral back to the Rubiconians, or you spread it out, or however it's phrased. Point being is that the story is fine. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. The story, again, isn't too punchy. I think that there could have been a few more missions, quite frankly, in the to help build up what each organization actually is, actually help actually have 3 missions with a group, 3 missions with a group, 3 missions with a group, instead of boom boom boom, you're switching all the time. I think that would have allowed for the pacing of the story to feel a little bit more fleshed out, rather than some of the story needing to be read out or searched for, rather. Again, I think that could have easily expanded upon the story by enhancing the amount of missions, and really learning about what these groups, what makes them distinct, what makes them flawed, what makes the Liberation is kind of stood out a little bit, I suppose, but I also go, I mean, but is there any flaw? I don't know. Again, there's just not enough time, and I think that same thing goes for the fellow armor ACs that you come across throughout the game. Sometimes you share a singular mission with them, And again, I think that that would have been more interesting to, again, have even more missions with a partner. Like, I think that would have been a rather fascinating thing, like a entire prologue as you're like training, like you're actually with like a higher ranking guy that you'll see throughout the story, and that could have been an entire prologue slash your actual training session instead of a very generic 3 hallway system that just, yeah, while it teaches you the game, sure, it doesn't really enhance the story in a meaningful way by any degrees, while what I'm suggesting simultaneously would teach you how to play and give you an in-depth look at what some of these AC pilots are like. Really flesh them out beyond really baseline sort of like because I can't remember any of the AC's names at this point without looking them up, quite frankly. Like, I should be able to remember their names. They should be sticking out. They should be memorable. All of these things should be a result of an excellent story, but rather a lack thereof, or a lack of standing out, rather, is what I would prefer to say. So yeah, I think a 5 out of 10 is a fair objective score here. As far as the gameplay is concerned, that is on a whole different level. I loved playing Armored Core, whatever one previous to this was, so I already knew that I was looking forward to playing more Armored Core finally. And boy, did that feeling come rushing right back, and the challenge rating was definitely a high bar, but not out of the realm of possibility, which is just the right level of where I think this type of game should be, since it's made by the people of, like, Elden Ring, for example. I think that is just the right level of challenge, where you're continuously pushed to your limit of what you can experience as a gamer. That feels like it is relatively suited to picking you up. You have the tutorials just in case. You have your movement. Now you're figuring out the basics and stuff like this. And once you really get down the buttons, which are pretty, other than the, I swapped my L2 and L1 and R2 and R1 buttons with each other because I prefer it that way, for myself. But, other than that, like, I'm glad that the game even opportunes itself to have controller change options like that, so that the player can feel like they're the ones customizing the way that they play, that feels just right to me. So even that in itself is just a quality of life, like, baseline that I would hope to see in plenty of games, quite frankly. Where, again, you can remap buttons that just don't feel right, because there are definitely some games where I'm like, oh, I hate that this button is mapped to this, because my mind isn't doing that typically, and has to get used to this different scheme or whatever. There's definitely some games I can point to outside of Elden Ring, which was another game that allowed you to switch your controls, thankfully. But I digress. The guns are fun and expensive, from machine guns, handguns, shotguns, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, hand cannons, little, like, pod things that, like, assist you. There's just a vast way of opportunities of weaponry at your disposal to give you the edge on a battle. There's so much of, like, again, there's so much of that player choice that is so addictive, that is so just, like, inviting to the player. It's just so customizable. In fact, the only thing that I would push for, I think that there should be even more like melee weapons than the one. Yeah, there's quite a few, but I think that there should be a metric ton of them as well. An overwhelming number of them, dare I say. You have your sword, you have your chainsaw, you have your like double-edged sword, your lance, your pile bunker. I'm pretty sure there's like a laser sword, which is like the generic like starting one, if I remember that correctly, because I might have switched it too much to remember which one's the starting one, but I digress. Point being is like there's quite a few options here, but again, I think that you can expand upon them. I think that the melee build should expand to both arms, in fact. I think that you should be able to hold two swords. I think you should be able to swing, 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 swing on enemies. I think that that should be expanded upon. Again, really just letting loose on the melee if that is an opportunity. Because I think that that would be really fun as a alternative way to play. Outside of gunplay, which again is already expansive as is, quite frankly. So I would want the sword play or melee play to catch up to that level of expansion. The gameplay is quick. It is whippy quick. You are constantly thinking about like, oh, there's enemies and you can see them on your radar. And each one's providing you different challenges with their own, their own weapon setups and, their little bubble guns or their big cannons or whatever else that they're gonna throw at you. You have to be ready to dive and dodge and, boost out of the way. Know when to heal. Know when to when to use your little extra ability, whether that be a shield on yourself or maybe perhaps an expansion of damage outward, or again more customization about how do you want to how do you want to go about those type of options when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of how these more limited like smaller use time items that you come across throughout the game. The arena that really, I'll admit, I think the arena could have been a little bit more challenging. I found that there were certain weapons in this game that definitely lended themselves to being completely brutal in the arena. The mine expansions that shoot little lasers, I found that those, if you see my gameplay of every time I'm in the arena, those were wicked at tearing the enemies apart. My goodness, I got through the S tiers like this with those things, assisting me through them. And yeah, there were definitely some that were lower ranked that felt like higher challenge ratings than some of the S tiers, but maybe it was because of the gear that I was getting later on that was so good. I don't know. Again, I think that there just should have been a swapped around version of which ACs you are fighting at which points. I think obviously you want to reserve the challenging ones for the S tier. I think that would be the given, obviously. And then there's like the things past S tier, which are like the alpha, beta, and omega challenges, if I remember the symbols correctly. I could be mistaken, but I think those were the three. Point being is that those are they became fairly easy after a certain point. And the main gameplay did also provide some of its own challenges with some of its own bosses. from Carla. Well, actually, every boss was indeed a wall to overcome. Trying to figure out what's this one's weakness. How can I take advantage of it? How can I, what weapon is going to be effective on this one? Everything became a strategy for the boss battles. So the boss battles are like the apex of this game, of where I think this game absolutely shines, is in the boss battles. This is some of the best boss battles I think I've ever come across in a video game in a long time, where they were just that memorable by how many times I was consistently being pushed to my limit. Instead of it always feeling like, oh, I'm just blazing through it and then finally getting the challenge at some later point. No, it was challenge wall, the first helicopter, because you're still figuring out how to play the basics at that point. Or at least I was, because I didn't do the training or as much. I was kind of doing the training a little bit and then the gameplay. So I was like kind of still on the noobish side and trying to figure out like how to boost effectively. So finding out that threshold, finding out that wall, getting past that wall, that first wall, that helicopter, was definitely a challenge, but I got there. And once I got there, it's the next boss, and then you eventually hit a thing called, well, the wall, where you meet, I think it's called the Juggernaut or something, something big, obvious, another big one, where you can only hit the back of it, for example, and you do have your ally there to assist you for a good chunk of half of the battle, but then you're on your own, and once you're on your own, it gets a lot harder to deal with, and this kind of teaches you how to, again, boost more effectively in your arena. The ice worm itself providing a challenge of overwhelming odds. In fact, you need a specific gun just to take down its shields specifically. In fact, I went in there without it just to see what would happen, and the allies are like, "What the fuck? What are you doing? Why didn't you bring the weapon, you idiot?" And you get called out, which I found really funny, but I was trying to see if I could actually do it, and it was near impossible to do it without that specific weapon. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And they're like, okay, fire, and then you break the shield immediately. And then you go through it, and the rest of it's pretty easy once once you actually hit it and all that. But point being is that without it, whew, you are in for a challenge. And once you go through, your first playthrough, which is likely, I think most people will probably end up picking the route that I did, most likely, I think. The secondary and thirdary, go-throughs don't let up on the challenges, and in fact, they enhance them. Like from the final boss, just as an example, or well, at least one of them, being the one that you have to fight twice, essentially. And how effective that is, and all of its various attacks and its patterns that are very different from anything you faced before. And how much movement is needed, how much you are just scattering along the battlefield. It feels like you are playing a movie while you are in a video game. This is what that experience is like when you are gaming it non-stop. And it continues on from there, from fighting Walter himself. He was a challenge. Fighting Irie, for example, because I think she's a part of that ending too, where you fight her. I was stuck. I was stuck on her until I figured out, like, oh, I could, like, kind of skeeve against the wall to, like, bait out her moves in a way that her AI is, like, kind of, like, dictated to, like, keep charging forward, so she kind of gets stuck on the wall a little bit there. But even that, that didn't necessarily guarantee my victory. Like, I was still close to death even with that strategy. In fact, I think I died the first time, even with the strategy that I had picked up from someone else about using the wall as an advantage point, because of how effective the AI was able to still remove, motion around me. So there's still plenty of consistent challenges that are really, really pitch perfect here. So yeah, in terms of a gameplay score, this one's an easy 9 out of 10. I think that this game needs just a little bit on the touching up side, on the melee side, maybe a little bit of fixing on the arena, and with those two little adjustments, I think this is an easy 10 out of 10 game as far as gameplay is concerned. Like, this is an easy recommendation if you are looking for a game to play. This is an easy recommendation on that front. So yeah, that is my review of Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. And don't even worry, you don't even need to play the previous Armored Core games to even jump in, which is another nice little, thing, is that you don't need, at least I'm sure that you don't need any of the previous installments to understand this game. Despite being a numbered game, it's still an independent story in it onto itself. So even in that regard, I would actually give the story a little bit of a boost in that respect, that it's still its own story. So yeah, you could definitely jump right in if you feel like, oh, should I play the previous Armored Core games? No, you don't. I don't think that's mandatory or even required, or, I don't think that help builds anything. I mean, it'd probably be neat to see how much the gameplay has changed, I guess, but I mean, other than that, I'm not really sure if, again, story-wise, if it's needed. At any rate, that is my review of the game, and if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description, and one will head you over to my petition to about smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly, and fourth to my Discord server. You can join, collab, chill, and do all that cool stuff for free, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye.